to bathe in her silence, her power, her call. If wisdom could sing or whisper his secrets, eternally teaching the ways of the free. In my mind I can see them, I hear them, and I feel them. For love, peace, and wisdom are all part of me.
So Om Shanti, and a very warm welcome to everyone. Those in the hall, and we have about maybe 60, 70 people here in the hall, and we also have our wonderful online viewers. Welcome to Madhuban. Lovely to have you with us. It's a huge fortune for us to have Sister Jayanti be with us today, and for her to be able to revise Baba's Murli from yesterday with us. And as we know, Sister Genti has been with Baba since the late 1960s. She was so fortunate to spend some time with Brahma Baba before he became Avyakt. And Sister Genti is known as the Flying Angel. She's an angel because of her stage and because she has uplifted so many and taken them beyond their problems, their troubles. But she was also known to be flying from here to there in the world. There's times when I know she spent a night or 2 nights in different places and kept moving. And I know she does that on Zoom now, probably even more than she did before. So please welcome Sister Genti, and also a huge congratulations to Genti Ben for her new appointment in the role of administration of the Brahma Kumaris. So thank you, Genti Ben, for making this time for us.
Om Shanti. It's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. Firstly, because I feel Mount Abu is my home rather than the bottom of the mountain. But also because I love doing Murli revision because it's a benefit for me. And so when you're doing something knowing its value for yourself, then of course it's also value for others too, and those blessings also come your way. So yesterday's Murli, summary in one word: purity. Purity, purity, and purity. And Baba explaining the importance of purity. Purity is the foundation of Brahman life. Purity is the way to be able to experience God's love. Purity is the way to be able to have the experience of all attainments. And Baba always praises his children right at the beginning, that all of you have achieved what the great sages and saints, the Mahatmas, always say is impossible. And you're the ones who have shown that it is possible. And this is why you actually are the ones who are the great souls, not the sages and saints out there, but Baba's children. But also Baba explained very beautifully how it's easy for us to follow purity. And Baba mentioned a few things. Firstly, in Bhakti they have the system, and especially on Shivratri, there are some festivals in which there's a lot of feasting. In all traditions, there are festivals which are a lot of feasting. But Shivratri is not one of feasting, but rather it's one of fasting. And the Hindi word, there can be many different words for fasting in Hindi, but the word that Baba was using was vrat. And vrat on the one side means a fast, but also it means a commitment, a promise. And so Baba said, well, how are you able to manage this? What is it that enables you to manage it? And Baba said, well, the word fast, vrit, comes from vritti. It's connected with that. And vritti is attitude. And so when there's a change of attitude, then it's very easy to fulfill the determined thought or the commitment that you've made. And it's interesting that although the Murli wasn't a Shivratri Murli, but it was a Murli, I suppose, definitely it was one that had been spoken at that time to those who were from Punjab, because we saw Prem Bhenji, we saw Achal Didi. How many of you know these characters? Of course, Sona Ben and Meera Ben and Gopi Ben know them all. Nobody else? Nobody knew Prem Ben? 1, 2. And Achal Didi? 1, 2. Well, these were really, both of them, really amazing souls. And their power of purity was enormous, huge, really. You could feel their presence. So they were sitting, when they were showing that video, they were sitting there in the front row. So definitely it was played, it was spoken to the Punjab group at that time. And so I think they selected it for that reason, because now it was the turn of Punjab. But it was interesting because, especially at Shivratri, there is the fast, there is the promise, there is the commitment made to God. So all of these things were there in the Murli. It's interesting how things come together in a synchronistic way. So Baba talking about all of that, but Baba then saying that if you simply have that change of attitude towards another, that they are my brother. And of course your attitude also changes your vision. And so when you see them as your brother, then what are your feelings? And also when you yourself are stable in that awareness of soul consciousness, what is it that happens then? Then you have nothing but pure feelings and good wishes for them. And so Baba, right from the start, broadened out that whole subject of purity, which sometimes we just think is connected with celibacy, and yes, definitely that is a foundation that Baba was talking about. But Baba very quickly broadened it out to this idea of how is it that I'm seeing another? What is my attitude towards them? And I'm remembering a situation in which I was in the 90s maybe, and there was a person, not in London, another country, but we were working closely together in many different ways. And I kept coming into a bit of a hoo-ha with them. And it wasn't big, it was more subtle, but it was definitely a friction that was there. It wasn't smooth running. And I stopped and I asked myself the question, well, why is it happening in this way? And I decided that it must have been a Murli that Baba had spoken on, vritti, attitude. And so I started to explore my own attitude internally. And sure enough, I found that there were things that had happened early on that had impacted the way in which I saw this individual. And so I was lucky that I was able to see that, a few incidents that had happened very early on. And when I started to work on those and let go of those, then I could feel my attitude changing towards them. And lo and behold, I don't know whether they were going through the same process or whether it was just one way, but whatever it was, probably they were Brahmins, so they were going through the same. And this next time we met, everything was absolutely smooth, very, very sweet. And it stayed that way. And she's still around, and I'm still around, and we don't need to interact so much anymore. It's occasional rather than regular. But whenever we do connect, it's definitely a feeling of good wishes, pure feelings for each other. So I know that transformation in terms of attitude is such a major thing. And yes, it does work in a very powerful way. So when Baba speaks, then there are things that you've experimented with and you instantly resonate with those. And then there are things maybe that you haven't yet experimented with. And so then there's going to be time or homework. Baba gave us a lot of homework yesterday. It's for homework to be done as the next step for progress. And so Baba spoke about purity in terms of our thoughts, our words, our actions, our relationships, our connections, all of these things. So sometimes it might just be in the mind, an attitude. Sometimes it can actually get expressed in words, and sometimes even in actions. For example, you'll say, no, I don't work with this one, I can't manage with them. And you separate yourself from that opportunity. And every opportunity of service is an opportunity for fortune, not just in terms of doing things, but also in terms of learning and growing and changing. And so to shut a door on opportunity is going to be my loss, but if I'm able to stay with it and work through it, it's going to be of huge benefit for me also. So Baba reminding us purity on all the different levels, and of course it then gets expressed in relationships and also connections. Baba was also then concerned about how there are things that we don't see in ourselves and we don't check and change. And so Baba was saying, Amrit Vela, Baba's going to go on a tour, and usually, of course, in those days, Baba would be with us till late. And sometimes Amrit Vela was not so accurate for everyone. So Baba mentioned Amrit Vela several times in this Murli. And so Amrit Vela, Baba's going to check and see what you're up to. Are you doing what you need to do, checking and changing? So Baba mentioned that a few times, but in this case, just see what is your percentage of purity and how far have you come within that. And then Baba was very sweet. Baba said, you talk so much about being world transformers, the ones who changed the world. And of course, being a world transformer means that you're changing nature, you're changing matter, you're changing the 5 elements even. And so, are you a master almighty authority, the child of the one who is the almighty authority? And if you are, well, how come you're not able to change yourself? And if you are one who can change yourself, then you can definitely change others around you also. And yes, then you can make the claim that, yes, when I change, the world changes too. Then you're going to be able to have an impact on the world around you, and from that, on the bigger world too. So Baba was quite straightforward with everything. If you are a master almighty authority, how come you can't change yourself yet? And so where have all your powers gone? What's happened to you? So Baba reminding us very much about that transformation, that purity means transforming yourself. That was another definition that Baba was giving throughout the Murli. Transformation, transformation. And that is the making the impossible into possible. And then Baba quoted 3 different aspects that make us trip up in that whole subject of purity and transformation. And I'll share the Hindi words with you first because they all go together very much. So one was par darshan, par chintan, and par mat. And so where you're thinking about others, where you're looking at others, and thirdly, where you're then following the instructions of others rather than Srimat. And all of it is par, outside, whatever there is outside, rather than swa, what's going on inside. And so, in that subject of parchintan, where does it begin? It begins with lack of soul consciousness. I'm not willing to look at myself. It begins with pardarshan, looking outside myself, looking at others. And this is where all sorts of excuses and reasons and carelessness comes in. So I'm looking at others, and all this is creating waste thoughts within me. And so the train of waste thoughts has started, and it's going to be very difficult to stop it. And so how am I going to do that? And of course, once the train has left the station, then it's already gone quite a way. But Baba reminding us that whose instructions are you following? Are you following the instructions of others, or are you following instructions from Baba? And the problem with the vision out there is that then there's no time to look at the self. If I'm occupied in looking at the self and bringing about change within the self, then there's no time to be looking outside. And if I'm looking outside, there's no time to look inside. And so definitely looking out there, body consciousness and extroversion rather than introversion. And in that looking outside and all the waste thoughts that keep coming. And maybe it's actually, parchintan is also connected with gossip. So it's not just my waste thoughts, but it's usually negative thoughts also. Because there's going to be an element of things that I see that I'm not comfortable with, that I'm not happy with. And so I can't control things outside, that's the problem. I don't even manage to control things inside, but at least Baba's giving me power. And if I'm willing to take God's power, then I'm looking at what's going on inside, and I'm able to come to that state of control of what's happening inside. Outside, how can I possibly control others? There's no way, really. I think maybe I'm in charge and I can control, and they'll do as I wish while I'm there in front of them. And as soon as I turn my back, things are going to go haywire. I can't control people. Have you ever tried changing anyone or controlling anyone? And if you've tried, then you know that it doesn't work. It really doesn't. And circumstances, how am I going to control what's going on outside? You know, we have all these astrologers and we have all these people who have forecasts and planning and everything. Who could have predicted that COVID was going to last for a minimum of 2 years? It's still going on, but I know that the astrologers, people send me little snippets on WhatsApp, and there were a few astrologers who are very famous, and they were saying in 2020, by the time the summer comes, things will change. And then they stopped talking when things didn't change, rather they got worse. Literally, there were no more predictions that anybody was sending me about when Corona was going to finish. And of course, it hasn't really finished, but things have changed. So nobody could predict that. Nobody could have predicted that, okay, we are moving from an era of where it was very antagonistic Cold War to where it was warm relations and things seemed to be melting and everything seemed to be going fine. And then suddenly you see from outer space or above all these satellite images of troops gathering and borders, and then you're getting not just predictions but intelligence coming from different countries saying, yes, there's something brewing, something's going to happen, and it's escalating, and now there's a sort of threat that it might be nuclear. My gut feeling is that it's a rehearsal for us. I could be totally wrong, and if we're all asked to go home tomorrow, I don't know, but my gut feeling that we're coming to the brink and things will calm, but it will have been, maybe, I hope, a big wake-up call for Brahmins. That, yes, we've been hearing the tiger's coming, and when it really is time for the tiger to come up slowly, then we say, no, I've heard this often enough, it's not going to happen. So my point that you can't predict what's going to happen in terms of the world out there. And so if this is a wake-up call for me, and it's telling me that now, if I've been wasting time looking outside, now I can't do that anymore. I can't be careless about it. Baba was very sweet about that also, in commenting that children keep saying, Baba, when the time comes, we'll be fine. When the time comes, we'll be okay. Then there'll be such disinterest in the world that really we'll just be doing tapasya. Well, will you? No guarantees of that. But rather, let me start making whatever effort I've been making until now. It's good. It's brought me to Madhuban. I'm here and I'm moving ahead. But maybe what I need to do is to turn up the speed a little bit further and make sure that I do complete that task that I had set for myself, that determined thought that, yes, I want to become completely pure, I want to settle all accounts and be ready to go home. Baba played with us a lot about that. Are you ready to go home? Well, Baba's wanting to take you home, and Baba doesn't want to leave any child behind. It's interesting how, slogans come up, and they come up much later, and Baba's already come up with that slogan way back. So I am thinking about this expression, no one should be left behind. I've been hearing it in some of these past Avyakt revision Murlis, and the world out there only started to use this slogan, no one should be left behind, only a couple of years ago. Baba was using this in the context of the children decades ago, the 90s, or maybe even earlier. But certainly in this, Baba used this expression a couple of times. Baba's expressing all his love for you, but also cautioning you and drawing your attention to all of this, because Baba does not want to leave any child behind. And so it's out of love that Baba's making us so clear in our understanding of what it is we need to do. But after quite some time, Baba, when it's 18th January Murlis, like we heard last week, Baba often refers to the advance party or to the relationship of Baba and Mama and so on. But this one again was saying that the advance party, the dadis, and also your senior brothers, they're all waiting for you to get ready so that we can all go home together. and they have made a promise, and a very sweet promise. And that sweet promise is, we're waiting for you. We won't go home without you. We will all go home together. I found that very, very lovely, very, very sweet. So, but Baba's saying, they're waiting. Brahma Baba's been waiting how long? Since 1969. Just imagine, if you're kept waiting for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, you'll be drumming your fingers and think, what are they doing? Why aren't they here? And yet, Brahma Baba, beyond time, beyond space, of course, in the subtle region, but definitely very, very patient and loving, the mother, the father, both together. And so Baba's waiting for us. And then Baba's saying that, again, Baba mentioned this a few times, that Baba takes a tour of all the centers and sees what the children are doing. But especially at Amrit Vela, Baba's checking, what are the children up to? But then Baba also said that at different times, Baba still wants to see what the children are doing. And Baba saw that at all the centers, there's one particular aspect that's missing. And Baba kept also saying to us, check, what is it that's causing the weakness in your foundation of purity? What is there in your mind? What is there in your words? What's there in your actions? And there was this lovely expression that Baba used, Bal Phal, the power of purity and the fruit of purity. And the power of purity brings with itself the fruits of super sensuous joy, a joy which is beyond the senses. And if you explore this a little, you can see that lack of purity means being totally pulled into the physical senses, and purity means going beyond the physical senses so that they don't pull you. And so that very expression, a joy which is beyond the senses, it's totally connected with purity. If in my Brahman life I say, I'm not happy, it's quite a statement to make. It's a very serious statement to consider. Why? And Baba tracked it back to the fact that there's lack of purity. And so where is it that there's this lack of purity? Is it in my mind? Is it in my words? Is it in my actions? Why is it that Brahman life should be one of super sensuous joy, should be my birthright to be able to experience happiness all the time, not just sometimes, but all the time? It's a lack of purity. So Baba's saying, well, what is the main reason? Baba earlier had spoken about the three things, the vision outside, but now Baba was talking about something internal, the inability to put a full stop. The deities are mindful. I know that people have sort of run away with this term. They've hijacked this term, mindfulness. But in fact, the people who truly are really, really mindful are the deities. They don't remember the past. And Baba's explained, if they remembered the past, they would feel sorrow. They know nothing about the future, but they're not worried about the future. And if they did know anything about the future, they'd be worried about it. And so they know nothing of that. They're totally present in the moment. And at what point of time do we develop those sanskars? It's not going to be up there. It's not going to be in Satyug. My very entry into Satyug is my preparation today. And so to what extent have I developed that state of purity so that I am able to put a full stop? And that is purity, and that is yoga. Yesterday, Brijmon Bhai said that And Baba's given us a very new definition of yoga. And he then commented on this particular point that Baba had made, because Baba remembered the slogan that we always used to use in early days, Pavitra Bano Yogi Bano, be pure, be a yogi. And so purity, yes, Baba explained a lot about that, but also then a yogi. And surely a yogi means mastery over myself. Firstly, the physical senses, that's yoga, but also then over my inner faculties. And how am I going to put a full stop? If I have mastery over my thoughts, then I can put a full stop. If I don't have yoga power, I'm not going to be able to put a full stop. And of course, when I can't put a full stop, then those waste thoughts interfere in my yoga also. But Baba's definition of be pure, be yogi, put a full stop. And that's mastery over the self. And so Baba commented on how there's different stages within that also. That stage where instead of being able to put a full stop, you apply a comma. And at that point, Baba commented that when you're applying a comma, what's happening then is that you're thinking of others. Well, they don't do this. Well, why should I do it? So where I'm looking at others, that's the pause, the comma. I'm not putting a full stop. Something's happening and my thoughts are running, and I excuse myself instead of saying, okay, stop it. I say, well, so-and-so is also part of this. They're also doing it like this. So the comma. And then the question mark. And of course, Baba's often commented on question marks. Why, what, how, if, but, all of these things. And then the third one, the exclamation mark. I'm shocked. I'm surprised. Baba's mantra. Nothing new drama. Drama is fixed. Drama is predestined. Why should I be shocked? Why should I be surprised? No. That also indicates that I haven't learned to put a full stop as yet. And full stop, it's easy. In theory, it's the easiest of all. But of course, Baba's saying, practice it. Practice it for a week. And just see how you get on with it. And it'll then determine that final mantra that Baba has given us. Your final thoughts lead you to your destination. And always this question comes, well, is it just that one thought? But that one thought is determined by all my other thinking that's been going on. If my other thinking has been about others, if my thinking has been about why and what, so that's going to take me off in different directions. It's certainly not going to lead me to God, and it's not going to lead me to my own highest destination or what it is I could have achieved otherwise. So Baba connecting that full stop. If you're not able to put a full stop now, practice it. Give attention to it, and just check yourself. The whole subject is about introversion and checking myself. Sometimes it's easy for others to point out, sometimes it's not easy, but certainly it's only Baba and me who know what's going on inside. And so Baba's giving me all the information and all the tools and everything that I need to be able to make the changes within. And so definitely in this particular case, that lesson, my final thoughts are going to be determined by what's going on today. It's not just going to suddenly happen, but to what extent am I able to say stop and the brake is on. I say stop, and the brake comes on a little while later. Meanwhile, lots of things have happened. In a car, an accident happens. And in my thoughts, a lot of waste has happened. Time, energy, a lot of things have gone by. And so very, very important to be practicing this again. And again, Baba was talking about Amrit Vela and Baba going on a tour to see what's going on and what the children are doing. And so that state of mastery. Am I the master first of my own intellect? And if my intellect is filled with gyan, then it won't allow waste thoughts to come. If my intellect has space for other things, then that's where other thoughts can creep in. And so my task, Baba was connecting these waste thoughts with the full stop, obviously, but my task is to make sure that I keep my intellect engaged either with Baba or with Baba's knowledge, all the treasures that Baba gives me every single day. And I really am sometimes surprised at how Baba has given attention to the fact that Sakar Baba should give us a Murli every single day. And then Avyakt Bapdada, how is it that we've got all this treasure store of all these Murlis that started in 69 and we are already now into the 1990 Murlis. And so we have the Sakar treasures, we have the Avyakt treasures, and if we want to go back and look at other things, there's so many classes from all the dadis, but also all the trance messages that we've had through the years. Amazing detail about the quality of effort that we need to make and how to be able to make it. So sometimes you come across something by chance and it really touches your buddhi, your intellect, and you keep it there. And then it disappears and something else comes. But Baba just makes sure that there's a constant flow of very, very powerful treasures so that our intellect is never, ever empty. And if the intellect is kept full and complete, then no space for waste thoughts to come in. And so let me first be, the soul is everything, but the soul is first of all checking its buddhi. What's there within my buddhi? What am I carrying? Is it the things of the past? Is it the things of worry and anxiety for the future? Or is it really the treasures that Baba's filling me with today? And so the more I pay attention to what the quality of my buddhi is and how clean it is without anything else coming in there, to that extent then I'm going to have the power to have a hold on my mind. So this is why then Baba says, every day churn. When Baba asked Dadi Janki the question in Amritsar in the early 50s, early morning, Dadi had gone to Baba and Baba said to her, Janak, do you churn? And she didn't want to say no to Baba and she couldn't say yes, so she was silent. But from that Baba understood, and Baba said, you've been blessed with a big head, and so you've got a big container, and so fill that with treasures by churning every single day. And it became a blessing. Somebody asked me yesterday, I think, how Baba has said beautiful things, but how can I make them my blessing? Well, practice them. So that he didn't just hear it and then say, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. She started immediately and she kept it up all the time, not just early morning, but through the day. Hans and I would laugh and we'd say that something's happened and she's going to talk about it in class. Why? Because whatever had happened, she was already churning and interpreting the spiritual connection of that. So we knew that she'd be talking about it in class, and sure enough she did. And so out of all of that churning come all the profound truths that she's left behind as the legacy, thousands and thousands of classes that are still available if you want to study them. So my point that there's a huge amount of material. Fill the buddhi with that. And then the mind being engaged in using those treasures first for the self, and then, yes, for the world out there, whether it's Brahmins or others, but the churning that goes on in the mind, the flow of energy that's happening, is clearing out whatever other things were there from before. Churn, and yesterday is forgotten. Churn, and tomorrow you're not worried or anxious about it. Churn, and you're gaining power for yourself, nourishment for yourself, and very beautiful material that others are going to appreciate also. So Baba pointing out the state in which you're the master of your mind, and you don't let the mind go here and there and everywhere, but the break is so powerful that it says stop to the mind, and the mind stops at that moment. So no more negative or waste thoughts at all. And of course, yes, it's connected with the process of being the master of my sanskars. I carry the whole story of my journey of 84 births. But what is the time now? What is it that I have to emerge now? Time to emerge my own deity sanskars. And so the more I emerge those and not use the old sanskars. Daddy used to say that to us. When will you learn to stop using your old sanskars and your old nature? Some of you have been with Baba a long time, so you'll remember that these are the things that he used to talk to us, whether it was personal or in small groups or in classes, that she would use this expression, don't use your old sanskars. Use the deity sanskars and they'll emerge very powerfully and strongly. Another thing that Baba kept mentioning a few times in the Murli was, can you not hear the call of the time? Can you not hear the cries of those in distress? Can you not hear the bhagats who are calling out? And if you can hear them, then send them those pure good wishes of even a few drops of peace and happiness. And again, if I'm too busy with all sorts of other stuff, A, I can't hear the cries, but B, I don't have the capacity to be able to fulfill their cries. And Baba's not talking about running to the temple and giving a talk there. Baba's talking about being able to send them those thoughts in God's remembrance, that sakash that's going to help them wherever they are. Are we going to run to Ukraine now? I doubt it. But what we can do is, yes, link up with the souls there and remember them for a moment, send Baba's light, and then continue with your yoga. You don't remember them for half an hour while you're having yoga. You remember them just for a few moments. That's enough. You've brought them in front of Baba, and Baba's going to deal with it. But you have shared from your heart that peace, that love that they need at this time, the power that they need at this moment. Baba mentioned it a few times in the Murli. And then in the closure of the Murli, Baba was talking about the royalty of, Baba mentioned personality, reality, and royalty in the context of purity. And so, yes, now it's our Swadharma, it's the truth, it's the reality. Swadharma, our original state of being, the natural state of being of the soul, purity. We often talk about Swadharma Shanti. The original state of being is peace, but equally, our original state of being is that of purity. And so let there be that reality, that natural state of purity now, but also then the reality that, yes, this is how it is today. And that will then be the reality there. But Baba spoke at length about the royalty and how when you're in Paramdham, the light that radiates from you souls, even in Paramdham, is a very royal quality of light, very different to everyone else. And so yes, just as the stars of the sky, different degrees and different percentages of light, but also in Paramdham, different degrees of that royalty, of that light. And then when you come down in Satyug, the royalty of your crown of light, that personality that is there visible with such dignity and royalty. And then in the Copper Age, fascinating how Baba mentions that when people go in front of the deities, the images, not the real deities, but just the images of the images still have such power that people are able to experience peace. People are able to experience the fulfillment of their desires, that state of purity where they're able to speak to the deities with the truth of what's going on in their life and in their hearts. Amazing. The quality of souls today and the role that they play through bhakti, of course looking at the cycle and how Baba explains it is fascinating. But I'm thinking about the dadis and how somebody would come in front of, whether it's Dadi Prakashmani, Didi Manmohini, or Dadi Gulzar, or Dadi Janki, or Dadi Chandramani. They would feel content. Whatever was in their heart had been fulfilled. I meet lots of people nowadays who share with me stories of the times that they met Dadi Janki or Dadi Prakashmani, and their questions were all answered without Dadi having to say anything. Just Dadi's drishti was enough, but also where sometimes they didn't say something, and Dadi was able to intuitively know what was going on, and she was able to fulfill their thought, and she would speak about it or she would address it, and it would get resolved. They would come with a particular desire, but they were too shy to express it, and Dadi would know, and that desire would be fulfilled. So we've seen how the Dadis have functioned in Sangam Yug, and so it's very easy to understand that somehow that power gets conveyed to even their Bhagat souls in the Copper Age. And so we're talking about the royalty with which the images of the deities are cared for in Bhakti. Yes, you have statues of politicians and warriors and even sadhus and saints and whatever, but the reverence, the sanctity with which they look after the images of the deities is quite something else. But of course, Baba always connects it with Sangam Yug, what you're doing today. That's going to be what the deities, how the Bhagats treat your image, your deity image at that time. So now today Baba was talking about the royalty with which the Bhagats care for the deities. And so the word royalty came up quite a lot. Personality, royalty, reality. And so purity is all of that. And so if ever anybody had any question, why purity? Well, Baba's Murli definitely answered everything about that. So very, very important to just go into the depth of the self and see, what is the quality of my purity? Is it absolutely as it should be? And am I bringing it to the stage that Baba wants to see in me? There's another very lovely passage that Baba mentioned, in which Baba said at first, your purity gives you happiness, and when you give happiness to others, you receive blessing. Baba used the word dua, good wishes. Let's change the language. The dua that you get those good wishes from others, and you've given good wishes to yourself. And then a bit further on, Baba said how when you really have purity, then there are 3 types of vardhan, blessings that you receive. Firstly, you bless yourself. Secondly, you receive blessings from Baba because Baba sees you as a worthy child. And thirdly, you receive blessings from the senior instruments who are responsible for taking care of the family, because they again see that and they appreciate it. So that was also very touching, how Baba mentioned what you do and the result of what you're doing, and the feeling that you get from others also. If others are seeing me with that love and giving me blessings, you can feel it. And if they're not, you can feel that too. And I've been remembering how in a small gathering way back in the 80s, we were still in Pandav Bhavan in those days, and it was with a group of teachers after lunch. And in those days, Dad used to say, "Come and have fruits with me." And there'd be a plate this big full of all sorts of varieties of fruits for everyone. And there was chit-chat always. So Daddy asked the question, "What effort are you making?" And everybody answered, about 30 of us. And then somebody asked Daddy, "What effort are you making?" And Daddy's response was, "When I leave, I want to make sure that out of everyone's heart, there's only good wishes for me, dua. Sabke dil se dua nikle." That everybody should give me nothing but those good wishes from their heart. And it stayed with me all these years, because sometimes you do a lot of service, but is it bringing me blessings? Is it bringing me good wishes from others? And so Dadi, of course, she never stopped doing service. She was continually doing service, but way back in the 80s, and just imagine she carried on for another 27 years after that. But it was this motivating thought: am I able to receive blessings from what I do now? And so think about it. Whatever it is that's happening, that at least it should be such that there are blessings from everyone's heart that come my way. So powerful, Murli, but also lots of homework. And Baba kept saying, "This is homework for you. This is what you have to keep checking." And the checking is not enough. The checking is first step, but then the change. So transformation leads to purity. Om Shanti. I'm not going to stay with you to enjoy the yoga. I have to be downstairs and on the stage. They've got a program starting at 8 o'clock that's going to finish at, they say, maybe 10:30, but that means who knows. So I take your leave. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Genti Ben, from us, but more than us, it's all those online who have also been enjoying your class. Must be thousands. And we remember that we are here to give blessings. So whether Ukraine or anyone else, we've got time, half an hour now, with Sister Mira, who will join us for meditation. Thank you, Genti Ben. Om Shanti.
So